All right. So we're talking about Japan sort of influence in the 21st century, and I think really can't talk about that without discussing anime because I think that, definitely it is very Japanese, and it is very much part of the world. I think out of many things when people think about Japan in the 21st century, a lot of people think about anime, um, and I mean, it's a huge industry. 2017, it was $19 billion at least generated, and that's through all sorts of media. First of all, anime is sort of short for animation. Just in case you didn't know that, that's where it comes from. We're gonna have a couple presentations on anime as well, which will be nice. There's tons of mediums for it. There's manga, there's comic books, TV series, movies, video games, merchandise. I mean, everything that you could possibly think of. Uh, um, Coming out of anime. So I mean, it's this huge imprint, right? I myself don't really, I'm not really too up on it. I know there's probably people in this class who know a lot more about it than I do, so I'm not gonna like try to pretend that and give sort of talk about it in any sort of depth. I just kind of give a little bit of history here. I guess like for me personally, my first connection with it, was growing up. I remember watching Voltron as a kid. If you're not familiar with this is a kind of so this little Voltron guy. This is a there's like five different Voltron sort of animal things, and they go and fight different space battles. But at the end of every show, they had to team up and make this Voltron. They had to come together to make this Voltron robot that would then, ultimately win the battle of the day. But I remember watching that, and I mean, it was just amazing. And again, it was like the typical anime. I mean, this is the '80s, so typical anime, sort of, the voiceover, so the mouth would move, but just their voiceover. But really, this idea of space and fantasy and robots. I mean, it was just really well done. And, it was it was sort of that's kind of my background in it. And then as the Transformers were there as well, GoBots, these sort of all these sort of ideas of anime. Though I kind of stopped watching this before sort of in the '90s, where you have things like Pokemon and other things showing up. But I mean, so I mean, it's definitely been around for a long time. It has a cultural imprint, going back, in Japan, obviously a little bit longer, but on an international stage, I mean, '70s, '80s, '90s, getting more and more popular. So I kind of went through, I mean, highest ranked anime series. Again, I kind of like, Googled it, and then, this is all very subjective. So I mean, different top tens have different top 10 different rankings. So I mean, this is by no way objective. It's just what people came. But Death Note seemed very popular. Again, I'm not very familiar with any of these. I'm sure other people are. Dragon Ball Z I've heard of. Naruto I've heard of, and like the Naruto run. Attack on Titan, One Piece. These all were in the top five. Um, um, and they're all very different, right? Some more children, some more robot tech stuff. Death Note seems more like sort of futuristic, but sort of fantasy, but also a little bit darker. And that's the nice thing about anime. I mean, there's plenty. I mean, whatever you are interested in, there's an anime for it. Um, the highest grossing anime franchise is Pokemon. I mean, I didn't even know this. It's the largest in the world, 95 billion. I mean, it outranks Star Wars. I mean, this is, I mean, huge. And this is like franchise merchandise. It's not just the show, but it's the movies, it's the video games, the merchandise, right? That whole world. So Pokemon is number one in the world, which is just, I mean, just fascinating to me. And then the highest grossing films, Your Name on 2016, Spirited Away 2001 is also up there as well. And then, I mean, today, I mean, you can't really talk about anime without like the conventions and the cosplay stuff. Again, New York City was the first one, sort of the first convention, but the sort of Comic Con as we know it today, and then all the cons that have come out with it since then started in 1970. Now, they're huge. I mean, every city has one. I mean, there's these giant things, and this cosplay, this otaku culture that's formed up around anime and sort of this Japanese world. I mean, it's just, I mean, I think it's really sort of pretty an international imprint impact of this on a global scale. And then just sort of some anime history. Just kind of give a little background of it. What would you consider of anime as sort of animation? Right, starts in first ones kind of came out in 1917. Seitaro Kitayama is sort of seen as one of the founders of anime. The first anime was this thing called Dekobu's New Picture Book. Failure of a Great Plan was sort of the first one that is historically attested. These are really just short 5 minute, like 3 to 5 minute films. They're mainly made in chalk, were the first ones, that they would erase. They would write in chalk and then erase it, and that's how they would get it going. The first sort of anime that we have survived of is this one called Nakamura Gatana, or the Blunt Sword. It's the oldest surviving anime as sort of animated. The problem was a lot of these were destroyed in this 1923 Kanto earthquake, which is devastating. Yokohama, Tokyo. I mean, it was an earthquake, and then followed by a tsunami, and then followed by fires, and it just wiped out a lot of the earlier anime stuff. But if you get on YouTube, you can look at Nakamura Gatana. It still exists today. And then 30s and 40s, this is where you sort of transitions to sort of talkies, where you could people would speak over the animations. They switched to cells, right? So that you have sort of different cells, sort of modern, more typical animation features. And then similarly to America, a lot of these early animations were war propaganda in 40s, 30s, and 40s. Same thing that happened. Disney was also, that's how Disney got their start, right? They started making films for war propaganda as well. So that one means nothing new here. But animation as a field, and it kind of came into its own, and again got a lot of funding through that because it was very popular. People watched it. One of the first full-length films is this Momotaro, Sacred Sailors, and it was a Navy propaganda film produced in 1945. And then Osamu Tezuka here is the god of manga, and he kind of comes out, especially in the 50s and 60s. And this is where it really kind of anime gets in. This is him here with his famous Astro Boy, or Tetsuwan Atom. Which is, one of the most famous, kind of really sort of define the generation. This what anime is, the features of the big eyes and the hair and the sort of fantasy aspects are all really. A lot of people look at Osamu Tezuka as sort of the founder of all of this. And 1962 was a really interesting year, in that it's when Tetsuwan Atama comes out, but also this Senin Buraku comes out. It's sort of the first adult version of anime. And then similarly, Etsujin 28 Go, or what in America is known as Gigantor, comes out. And this is her sort of robot or tech anime. So 1963 is this sort of seen as this sort of turning point of anime, where anime transitions from not just children but also to adult films, more, or I guess, adult themed things. And then also, as if you think anime, Voltron. You have this robot. There's sort of mechanisms, futuristic robot themes are very much part of this anime world. And then anime today, I think you really can't talk about it without talking about Hayao Miyazaki, who is pictured here in Studio Ghibli or Ghibli. And he has his impact, and anime was popular, but the idea of anime films and this sort of genre really is comes up with him. He's seen as definitely the main figure of their of sort of current anime. A little bit about him. He was born in Tokyo. He got hired in 1963. Worked on a bunch of films sort of in the background as animator. So he really, he learned every sort of part of anime. And then his first film, Castle of Cagliostro, came out in 1979. And then Nasuako and the Valley of the Wind in 1984. And then 1985, Studio Ghibli was founded, and this is really where, kind of comes to its own, right? It essentially becomes sort of international films. Princess Mononoke is a big one there. Grave of the Fireflies is another big film released here. And then the big one, right, Spirited Away in 2001. ends up winning Best Animated Feature, an Oscar for Best Animated Feature in 2001, and that really kind of put anime um, on sort of on the map as well as these films could be popular for everyone, right? And the themes that are there. I mean, just so many very complex ideas and concepts. So that's kind of the background of that. Again, I think a lot of people are familiar with a lot of these movies as well. Themes that are brought up within these movies. And then Miyazaki ends up retired in 2014. Studio Ghibli is still there, still around. Hasn't produced quite as much, not as prolific after his retirement, but he's definitely the impact is there. And then I kind of started making like a list of popular anime, but again, I mean, the list is just really long, and I think anime is one of those things. If you like it, you probably already know it. I'm not going to tell you anything new about anime in today. If you are interested in anime, or want to get more interested in it, or want to find out where to get some, I found this site, therightstuffanime.com. Kind of, this is one of the first ones to sort of get anime directly from Japan and release it to America. Started in the 80s with Atom Boy, and the founders wanted to find, Astro Boy. They wanted to find videos of it, and then they were the first ones to sort of package it, release of a VHS, and I don't know. They have, so I think, from my impression, anything you want to find, you can find on this site. They have really good blogs if you want to learn more about it. Again, if other people have other sites, I'm sure that you probably know where to get your anime stuff from. But rather than me just kind of list off a bunch of things, I mean, there's really any topic you want. If you want action, if you want psychological horror, if you want thrillers, if you want romance, if you want just fun children's stuff. There's Ampamon. Ampamon's a very famous one. He's like the the Bugs Bunny, if you will, of Japanese sort of anime. My son watches a lot of Ampamon stuff. He's got a bread face, so like he loses face, so they cook a new face. So sometimes people eat his face, but he can always get a new one. And he fights Bikemon, who's the germ guy. So they're always like battling things, and so it's a nice kid. Kid one as well. So there's anything you want in the anime genre. So if you're into it, I'd say, or if you want to learn more about it, I would say go to this site, at least a place to start. And again, you can see today. I mean, this is the Gundam statue, 65-foot statue in Tokyo that was just erected recently. So it is pertinent today. And again, I look forward to those to the presentations that are going to talk about anime, so we can all learn a little bit more as well.